I heard an interview of Nick Saban, I think most would probably say the greatest college football coach of all time. Most successful, definitely. And one season, he's being interviewed before the season, and the guy interviewing him said, is a national championship the goal this year? I mean, he always has the best team. It's like, probably is the goal. But he said, no, that's never the goal. I can't control that. I can't control how good LSU is. I can't control how good Georgia is. The goal for us is every week we show up to practice and we pour our hearts into it. The goal for us is a culture of winning and a culture of excellence and a culture that's committed to one another and a culture of integrity. The goal for us is to get better every single week. That's the goal. And we just believe if we hit our goal consistently, that maybe that national championship just might be the outcome, but we can't control that. So right now we're in a season where, for those who don't know, there was sort of a covenant among the property owners in the plaza. And in those covenants, it specifically said that none of the buildings can be used as a church. We had to have everybody okay that we make an amendment to that. We thought we had everyone's okay, but we didn't know that there was one person that needed to have a say that we had no way of knowing that they had a say in this process. All the owners of the properties were in. We thought we were good. Last minute, actually there's somebody else who has a say. And they said no. They said they don't want a church in there. And we can't control the outcome. And the outcome is not how I determine whether we did the right thing. The outcome isn't how I determine whether we heard from God. Like, I look back at sort of like a big math problem, look at your work, show your work, and I'm looking back at our work, and I'm saying, we did this right. We did this right. We did it right. And this is how you do it in your life. You get a word from God. You say, man, I think God's telling me I'm supposed to quit my job and start a business. You don't quit your job tomorrow and start a business. Hey, who in my life, who could speak into my life and walk with me through this? Do I have leaders in my life? I say, hey, man, I feel like God's leading me this way. Yeah, I confirm that. I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk alongside you. And regularly bathe that thing in prayer. And I'm telling you consistently, almost every time we met as leaders, I'm in the room going, is this still God? Should we still be doing this? I'm constantly ear to the ground. Lord, what are you saying? Because at any moment, he has permission to change directions. Abraham heard from God, sacrifice Isaac. He heard from God. Abraham did not sacrifice Isaac because he heard from God again. And God didn't tell him the whole picture. He told him, do this. And I'm telling you, whether God does a miracle, and there are things, I'm not ready to but there are things happening behind the scenes that we have no control. We've fired every bullet in our gun. We have nothing left to do to make this building ours. Nothing in our power. But I just see God's hand. There's little things happening that I'm going, oh my goodness, he's still at work in this thing. And so Tuesday, I've been going Monday through Friday every day, five days a week, walking around that building and praying. Tuesday was the last time. And I sat in my car and I said, God, I've never thought of praying as getting in the way, but I'm going to get out of the way. And I just kind of cried in my car and I said, God, the last year of coming here every morning and meeting with you, talking to you and you talking to me, those mornings when I was so scared, those mornings when I was so overwhelmed, I've really loved this. But I'm giving it to you. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm not going to stop praying this way because I've stopped believing. Quite the opposite. I actually trust you. And the picture I got was like now I'm not saying I'm the boss of Jesus, but if I was the boss of somebody and I delegate a task to them, I trust them when I stop meddling with the thing that I gave them. And Tuesday, I delegated, I don't know a better word than that. I delegated this thing to God. I said, okay, you work your miracles. I'm done. And so I'm not going to lie. When I first got the news, first feeling was embarrassment. Because I felt like God told me to lead boldly, and I did. I didn't hold back anything, and I made it pretty clear what I thought God was going to do. So at first I feel embarrassed because it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And then I felt oh my goodness, all those people who gave so sacrificially. Ugh, the weight of all that. And this morning in worship, for from him are all things, and to him are all things. That money came from him. The outcome of this thing is unto him. I don't need to worry about the feelings of people who believed, and so that I'm not going to make them idols. This is from him and through him and to him. And so I just want to encourage you with that. Like, I know you're going through stuff too, that you need a word from the Lord. There is a process and how we walk these things out in community. And just because you do it all right doesn't mean it's going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. And so we have to wrestle with disappointment. And I want to say this is exactly why God's been preparing us, even in what we've been talking about on Sundays. Because, in the family of God, we're never meant to carry heavy burdens alone. And I don't know, maybe this isn't a burden for you or a disappointment for you. For me, there are moments where it's like a gut punch. But I'm so happy that we're kind of focused in here on the house of glory, because it's reminding me that I'm not alone. We're in this together. And today we're actually going to talk about burden bearing, sharing the strength in shared weight. And right now, definitely some of us are feeling the weight of this disappointment, and maybe that's why this message is so timely today. So today we're going to learn how, as living stones in God's house, we lock arms and shoulder one another's loads. And we're going to discover that together we can carry far more than we ever could on our own. So we're going to open our Bibles to Galatians chapter 6. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians. Galatians 6. Galatians 6, verses 2 and 3. Galatians 6, verses 2 and 3. Says this: share each other's burdens, and this way obey the law of Christ. If you think you're too important to help someone, you are only fooling yourself. You are not that important. I love the New Living. You think you're too important? You aren't. So just a few points on burden bearing. First of all, burdens are inevitable. There's no one who gets to live a life burden-free. We all experience burdens. I think it's interesting that this is post-cross. Galatians is a message emphasizing the grace of God, and Paul is saying, you're in grace. He's speaking to Christians, and he's saying, bear one another's burdens. Christians have burdens. This isn't something that once you surrender your life to Jesus, magically we have no burdens. Burdens are inevitable. Jesus promised them. John 16:33 says, I've told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you'll have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I've overcome the world. And then John 15, 18 through 20 says this: if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. Since they persecuted me, naturally they'll persecute you. And then Matthew 10, 21 and 22, he's describing the world. And he says, a brother will betray his brother to death. A father will betray his own child. And children will rebel against their parents and cause them to be killed. And all nations will hate you because you're my followers. Trouble and burdens. He promised those things almost just as much as he promised anything else. I don't think he could have been more clear about this. But here's Jesus' prescription for the diagnosis of burden. John 13, 34 and 35. He says, so now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I've loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. And just the context of this is given in the upper room discourse, the same extended teaching where Jesus repeatedly warns the disciples about coming trouble, persecution, hatred from the world, and his own departure. And he says, okay, in the context of all this stuff you're going to face, here's what I'm telling you to do. Love each other. And love each other the way that I have loved you. Well, right after predicting those hardships, he makes this command. Why? He's talking about a real, practical love. This isn't just sentimental love of warm, fuzzy feelings. How did Jesus love us? He self-sacrificed to bear our burdens. Literally, this is how Jesus loved us, is he took our burdens. And so Jesus is saying to his disciples, hey, in the midst of all the stuff you're going to face, here's the solution. Love each other like I loved you. Bear each other's burdens. I love what Bonhoeffer said. If you've never read Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you want to get challenged in your commitment to the community of God, Life Together. You can Google it. There's a free PDF online somewhere. You can read it online for free. Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dude was radical about covenant community. Holy cow. Listen to what he says here about burden bearing. He says, it's only when he's a burden that another person is really a brother and not merely an object to be manipulated. It's the minute you're a burden to me that you're no longer a tool for my benefit. And man, the church is really good at that. Jose comes in and I'm going, okay, what's Jose good at? He plays guitar. Oh, we need a guitar player. Oh, what a blessing. And so I'll ingratiate myself to Jose and I'll talk about how awesome he is. And you just really got this call on your life. And I think you'll find joy and you'll find purpose. And secretly inside, I could care less whether he finds joy. I found a guitar player. But the minute Jose becomes a burden and I actually don't benefit, he's not giving me, he says, man, Nathan, I don't feel like I'm supposed to play guitar anymore. And I go, oh, well, see you later, Jose. I'm looking for somebody else. No, the minute he becomes like a burden to me, I'm not benefiting from him. Now he's actually my brother. Now I get to bear this burden with him and go, man, he's struggling. I know he's called to play guitar, but he's battling depression or he's battling this financial thing or whatever. I'm sticking it out with him because he's not a tool. I don't love him because he's useful. I love him because he's my brother. So burden bearing is inevitable. We're all going to face it. Burden bearing isn't optional. Burdens are inevitable. Burden bearing isn't optional. It's interesting the language Paul uses here in Galatians 6. He says, fulfill the law of Christ. The law. Wait, we're not under law. Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are. As a follower of Jesus, you are under the law of Christ. Absolutely. It's a new law. It's the law of love, but you are absolutely under the law. And this is how you fulfill it. How do I fulfill the law? Bearing your burdens. I think it's interesting that he's writing this to the church in Galatia. And you remember, for me, one of my favorite verses in Galatians, the one that sticks out the most, is when Paul's rebuking them. He says, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Who's tricked you? And what he's talking about is they began to mix law and grace. They began to mix the old covenant and the new covenant. And they begin to mix works and grace and into their salvation and all that. And so actually this is a letter written to get them back into grace. This is a letter written to say, hey, put down all those dead works. You can't be saved by those things. Get into grace. And in that context, he says, hey, bear each other's burdens. That's how you obey the law. And when he says how you fulfill the law of Christ, he's using strong legal language. This isn't a suggestion, a good idea, or an optional spiritual gift for some special person who's got the burden-bearing anointing on their life. It is a command. It's a law given to every citizen of the kingdom. Think about this. Think about, paying taxes here in America. As American citizens, we don't get to say, you know what, I just don't feel called to pay taxes. I just don't have the grace on my life for taxes. If you do, I suppose you can try that. And if it works, let me know. We have to obey the law whether we like it or not, whether it's convenient or not. We're obligated to pay those taxes as a U.S. citizen. We have rights. And guess what happens with those rights that are inalienable, that came from God? If you don't maintain your responsibility as a citizen, you lose your rights as a citizen. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think you're going to be pursuing happiness in the pen. Right? And so as citizens of the kingdom, man, I've got rights. I've got authority in the kingdom. I've got a call of God on my life. Yeah, you absolutely do. You also have responsibilities. You want to walk in your purpose? You can't have it both ways. Come on, Spider-Man. With much power comes much responsibility. We know this. This is the law of Christ. It's the law of love. I just read it. So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Now I'm giving you a new suggestion. Now I'm giving you a new, little idea. No, this is a commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. So I would say this, the law of Christ in one sentence is love one another the way I have loved you. Love one another the way Jesus has loved you. So how did Jesus love you? He bore your burdens. He carried the burden of your sin. He carried the burden of your shame. He carried the wrath of God that you deserved. So Christ-like love always looks like burden bearing. It's not just warm feelings. It's not just praying nice prayers. Real love gets under the weight of a thing with someone and says, you know what? This load is too heavy for you. You cannot carry this alone. Let me help you carry it. This is the law of Christ. So, burdens are inevitable. Burden bearing is an optional. My next point is this, that burden bearing is priestly work. Burden bearing is priestly work. 1 Peter 2, one of my favorite scriptures, tells us we're this royal priesthood, this holy nation, that God chose us, and he chose us to be this royal priesthood. You are all priests. You're all priests. And burden bearing is part of your priestly duties. It's one of your priestly assignments. In the Old Covenant, priests didn't just offer sacrifices for their own sins. They regularly carried the burdens, the sin, the guilt, and the failures of the people into the presence of God on the behalf of the people. In fact, there's this interesting story here. Look at Leviticus 10:17. I'll read the scripture and then I'll give you the context. This is Moses speaking. He says, "Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It's most holy. It was given to you to bear the guilt of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Lord." Moses says, this is to Aaron's sons. He says, "It was given to you to bear the guilt of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Lord." Let me give you the background. In Leviticus 9, the priests, Aaron and his sons, had just been officially ordained and consecrated. The glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. There was this powerful dedication of the tabernacle and the priesthood. God's presence shows up. Everybody falls on their face. It's powerful. And immediately after that high point, in Leviticus 10, the first few verses, Aaron's two oldest sons, Nadab and Abihu, offered profane fire, is what the scripture calls it, before the Lord. Fire came out from the presence of God and consumed them. They died instantly. This was a devastating blow on what should have been a day of celebration. What happened next? Moses noticed that the goat for the people's sin offering had been burned up instead of eaten by the priests, as God had commanded. And Moses became angry with Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, and asked this question: "Hey, why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It's most holy. It was given to you to bear the guilt of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Lord." So this is what this story says is under the old covenant, when someone sinned, either intentionally or unintentionally, they brought a sin offering to the priest. The priest would then lay hands on the animal, symbolically transferring the guilt and burden of the sinner onto the sacrifice. Then they would kill the animal and offer its blood on the altar. In some cases, the priest would actually eat part of the sin offering, symbolically taking the guilt into himself in order to make atonement for the people. The priests literally bore the iniquity of the people. They carried weight that wasn't originally theirs so the people could be forgiven and restored to God. So when someone in our church family is under a heavy burden, maybe it's sin, maybe it's shame, maybe it's grief, maybe it's financial pressure, marital failure, whatever it is, we don't just say, "Hey, I'll be praying for you." We step in like Old Testament priests, and we help carry that weight. Not only spiritually, but through practical help, emotional support, intercession, accountability, and love. And can I say to you what Moses said to Aaron and his sons? Don't worry, we'll balance this out, okay? I know some of you theologians are freaking out. We're going to balance this out. But let me say to you what Moses said to Aaron and his sons. It was given to you to bear the guilt of the congregation. Can you imagine that Old Testament priesthood? It was given to you to bear the sin, the guilt of the congregation. Whew. I'm so thankful for Jesus. We have a great high priest. He takes care of all of that. He bore the weight of all of our sin. And I love what Bonhoeffer, again, in Life Together, he says this: "He who's bearing others knows that he himself is being born. And only in this strength can he go on bearing." Aren't you so grateful I don't have to bear your sins? But that doesn't mean I don't have to bear your weight, your burdens. As a priesthood, we don't carry the weight. We don't actually carry it, the weight of someone else's burden. We help them give their burden to Jesus. So here's what I would call this is my definition of New Testament burden bearing. Bringing them to God and bringing God's grace to them. Bringing them to God and bringing God's grace to them. This is burden bearing. Hey, come on. I can see you're carrying a heavy weight. Let's take it. You might not have faith. I got faith enough for the both of us. Let's go into prayer, and we're going to give this thing to God. And I'm standing in the gap for you, and I'm believing for your situation, even if you don't. And I'm saying, hey, let's give this thing to God. I'm going to remind you of who God is, who he's been for you, who he said he will be for you, the promises he's spoken to you. I'm going to remind you of all that. I'm bringing you to God. And then in the presence of God, I'm saying, okay, God, pour out your grace on them. And I'm laying hands on you, and I'm saying, Lord, pour your spirit into them. Pour your power into them. Pour your grace into them. I'm bringing you to God, and I'm bringing God's grace to you. That's burden bearing. Charles Spurgeon said this: each burden we have to carry has once been laid on the shoulders of Emmanuel. This matters, guys. I think this is a game changer. If we can be a burden-bearing people. I look around the room and I don't know everybody's story, but I know a lot of what's going on. And there are some serious burdens in this room. And I don't know if you've ever gotten a call when someone's facing a burden. And you sit with them, and there's this temptation to problem solve, and you're going, hey, have you thought about this? Yeah, I thought about that. Oh, what about this? Yeah, I thought about that. And there's something in your flesh that wants to solve it. But you're not called to solve it, you're called to bear it. And so I sit with you in it, and I go, oh, this is heavy. I'm so grateful we have a great high priest. I'm so grateful that Jesus is with you in this. He's not forgotten you. He's not forsaken you. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't have the answer. You didn't call me for the answer. You called for me to infuse your life with hope. You called for me to stand with you and say, I'm going to bear this thing with you, and I'm going to speak the truth over you, and I'm going to remind you of who God is and who you belong to, and that he is faithful, and he who began a good work will be faithful to complete it. That's all I'm coming with. And sometimes you meet with folks that carry a burden, and most people, if their burden is a big rock, and you meet with them, this is what they're trying to do. Here, this thing's heavy, you take it. And man, when you love people, the most tempting thing to do is say, yeah, okay, I'll take that. I feel so bad for you, I'll take it. And now all of a sudden I go home like this. Now, why am I carrying this thing? It's not even my thing. Instead, I go, no, oh yeah, man, that's a big, heavy rock. Here, let me help you. Let's give it to Jesus. Let's give it to Jesus. He's faithful. This is part of being the house of glory. Because I think shared weight releases glory. Everything we talked about this morning is heavy, right? Sin is heavy. Grief is heavy. Financial pressure is heavy. Marriage struggles are heavy. Health issues are heavy. Prodigal children, wayward children are heavy. Anxiety, depression, heavy, 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 heavy. And here's what most people miss. God's glory is heavy. It's a weight. The weight of God's presence is also heavy. And I want to suggest to you this, that carrying each other's burdens isn't just an act of obedience, it's preparation to carry something far greater. We want to be the house where God's glory can rest. We want the weight of God's glory. Okay, let's practice. How about Nathan? You want to carry my weight? Yes, Lord. Yeah, okay, get in there and carry the struggle that Jose's struggling with. That doesn't seem very glorious. Romans 8:17-18 says, and since we're his children, we are his heirs. In fact, together with Christ, we are heirs of God's glory. But if we are to share his glory, we must also share his suffering. The suffering is preparing you for glory. The burden bearing is preparing you for a greater burden, a greater weight. Many times in the Old Testament, God's glory would fill the temple, and they fell on their face because glory has substance and weight. Every time you choose to help someone with their burden, you're being strengthened and prepared to carry something much greater. I think the church that avoids burden bearing remains shallow and weak. It doesn't take depth to put on a good Sunday. You can do that. It's pretty easy for a church to come together and put on a good Sunday service. And man, even God's presence shows up in worship. He's just so faithful. He does it. But it's about this deep. It's when we decide we're going to be more than an event. That we're going to be a family that actually walks in covenant commitment to one another. Says, come hell or high water, I'm with you. You stop believing, I'm not going to stop. You reject me, I'm not going to reject you. I'm in this thing for you. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to stand with you. I'm going to carry your burdens with you. That's a strong church. A church that learns to lock arms and carry weight together becomes mature. It becomes a strong house. A strong house that can sustain the weight of God's glory. In 2 Corinthians, Paul wrote that our present troubles are small and won't last very long. Yet those present troubles produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. You're called to carry a weight. And this burden bearing we do with one another is preparing us for the thing we really want to carry. So let me just, this won't be on the screen, but let me just go through healthy burden bearing. I want to compare and contrast, because for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. And we can find out a way to fall into one ditch where we don't care about anybody, and then we can overcorrect and we fall in the other ditch where I'm just a doormat. And I'm completely codependent, and I don't have my own thoughts or life because I'm living to carry everyone else's stuff, and that's not healthy either. I want to explain to you and kind of lay out what healthy burden bearing looks like. Healthy burden bearing comes alongside someone in a crisis or an overwhelming season. Unhealthy burden bearing takes over someone's life so they never have to face responsibility. Healthy burden bearing helps carry temporary heavy weights. Unhealthy burden bearing prevents them from carrying their daily responsibilities. Healthy burden bearing encourages growth, maturity, and dependence on God. Unhealthy burden bearing creates long-term dependence on people instead of God. Healthy burden bearing speaks truth in love even when it's hard. Unhealthy burden bearing avoids hard conversations to keep the peace. Healthy burden bearing points people to Jesus as the ultimate burden bearer. Unhealthy burden bearing, I become the savior in their life. Healthy burden bearing has healthy boundaries and knows when to say no. Unhealthy burden bearing has no boundaries and says yes out of guilt or fear. Healthy burden bearing helps them get back on their feet. Unhealthy burden bearing keeps them stuck by doing for them what they should do for themselves. Healthy burden bearing prays with them and points them to God's strength. Unhealthy burden bearing takes on their emotional weight until you're crushed. Healthy burden bearing leads to restoration and freedom. Unhealthy burden bearing leads to resentment, exhaustion, and unhealthy attachment. So healthy burden bearing says this load is too heavy for you. Right now, I'll help you carry it for a season. Enabling says, I'll carry this for you forever so you don't have to ever deal with it. One builds strength and releases glory. The other creates weakness and eventually breeds bitterness. I think it's ironic that what happens in a relationship where there's enabling happening and codependency, like if I just come in and take all your burdens for you, inevitably what happens, you would think that you would just absolutely love me, right? I've made your life Disneyland. I take off on all the heavy stuff. You get to just live your best life every day. But what eventually happens is there's resentment and bitterness forms, and it actually ruins the relationship. What I'm doing in order to maintain peace, and man, if I do this, maybe Jose will love me. Or if I do this, maybe he'll maintain the relationship. It actually ends in bitterness. It actually ends in a broken relationship. It's interesting, Galatians 6 is our key passage. We read 2 and 3. Bear one another's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ. If you think you're too important for this kind of work, you're not. And then only a couple verses later, look at what Paul says. Bear each other's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ. And then he says this, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. We're each responsible for our own conduct. So I would say burden bearing is not what we might think it is. I am not responsible for your situation. You are. I'm going to help you do the right thing. I'm going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and help you walk this thing out. But I'm not going to be responsible for it. When after I graduated college and I was working as a social worker, shockingly, I could not believe it, but one of my teachers at college asked me to come back and speak to the class, and I'm like, are you sure? Because I caused a whole bunch of problems because I don't fit into their worldview. And I was a little stubborn and let them know that as often as I could. But I was invited back to speak to the class. And one thing I noticed in those fields especially, it's a cliche, but it is so true. So many people that go into those fields of psychology and social work, all of that, there's a need in here. They need a caseworker. And so I'm speaking to this class, and I said, I see 3 ways of approaching your job. And I think if you're going to do it for the long haul and you're going to be successful, it's all about defining success correctly. And what I see is if you define success based on outcomes, just like I talked about earlier. So if I'm your caseworker and success looks like you getting a full-time job and having an apartment and living your best life and all of that, I can't control so many factors in that. But as a social worker, I want to be successful in my job. So a lot of people, that's the outcome. They get enmeshed with their client. And no, success looks like you having a job. And so I'm going to grab you by the ear. I'm going to drag you down to Taco Bell and you're filling out a job application. And then I'm going to pick you up every day and take you to work every day. And all of a sudden, my success is attached to your behavior. If I'm a good how do I know I'm a good social worker? Jose's got a job. So you do that for a while, and then what happens is your clients just don't do what you have this beautiful plan for their life, and they just don't obey. And they have it's like they think they're in charge of their own lives. And they start doing things that you don't agree with. And they blow up your whole plan, and then eventually you swing to the other side, and you just punch it in. And success looks like, this is your deal, dude. You're crazy. You don't have what it takes. You're not capable of getting a job. You just sit back, collect resources, and we'll just you just watch TV and we're good. I told this class, I said, you have to define success by only the things that you control. So when I met with my client, was I kind? Did I listen? Was I empathetic? Did Did I know the resources? Did I know what I was talking about? Did I connect them with the right people? Did I follow up? Did I take good notes? All the things that I'm trained to do, outcome is not on my list. I can't control that. I said, okay, I'm a good social worker. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Yeah, they made a crazy decision, but it's the same here. It's the same as a burden bearer. If my success as a brother and sister in Christ is attached to your choices, I'm going to either control you or I'm not going to get in your life. Each one is responsible for their own conduct. And so I'm going to come alongside of you and I'm going to say, hey man, I've been there. Here's how I got myself out. I gave that thing to Jesus and I started saving my money or whatever the issue is. You give them advice and then I kind of sit back and I watch. Are they open to what I'm saying? Are they putting into action the advice that I give them? Yes? Okay. They're a good candidate for me to come alongside and bear this burden with them. But if we walk away from our coffee meeting and nothing changes, I go, okay, each one's responsible for their own conduct. God bless. I'm going to find somebody else that needs help, and I'm going to come alongside them. I'm not going to enmesh myself with you and try to, I can't want this more than you. It's your life. I'm just here to love you, serve you, and carry this with you. You've heard this, I'm going to close with this. You've heard this phenomenon talked about, synergy. Synergy. It's the phenomenon where two or more agents working together produce a combined effect that's greater than the sum of their individual effects. Okay, let me say that in normal people. Synergy is like this. Let's say I can carry 100 pounds and Judah can carry 150 pounds. You'd say, okay, if we put Judah and Nathan together, they should be able to carry 250 pounds. But there's this weird phenomenon where Judah and I together can carry 350, 400 pounds. It doesn't make sense. There's something that happens when two people come together. Let me give you an example. A Belgian draft horse can pull about 8,000 pounds by itself. So you'd think two horses could pull 16,000 pounds together. But when they pull as a team, they don't pull 2 times as much. They pull 3 times as much, so 24,000 pounds. And when those two horses are trained together and learn to pull in rhythm, they can pull 4 times as much, up to 32,000 pounds. That's what synergy is. And God, guys, I look at the church and I look at some of you, what you're facing in your life, and I go, that's too much weight. But there's something when we come together, we can carry way more than we should together. Guys, there's hope for you in your situation. There's some of you in this room that have been carrying it alone, and it's time. It's time to let people in and say, hey, I need some help. I need you to pray with me. I need you to believe with me. I'm losing courage in this situation. I need you to put courage in me and encourage me. I need you to strengthen me. I need you to just walk with me. Sometimes when you're facing something scary, you don't even need somebody to say or do anything. You just need them to walk with you